The Appalachian Mountains had always carried a silence that felt heavier than ordinary quiet. It was the kind of silence that seemed to listen back. In the autumn of 1886, that silence deepened into something suffocating. The trees burned red and gold under the falling sun, and mist curled through the valleys like pale fingers searching for something lost. The small settlements scattered along the mountain ridges had grown restless. 25 women had vanished over the span of 2 years. Wives, daughters, travelers, widows. They disappeared from trails, from riverbanks, from berry fields. No bodies were found. No clear tracks remained. Just stories. People spoke in hushed voices of something that lived deep within the forest. Some called him a madman who had abandoned society. Others whispered about something older, something not entirely human. Children were warned never to wander beyond the tree line. Doors were locked before sunset. Fires were kept burning through the night. A.R.A. Caldwell did not believe in ghosts. She believed in answers. Her sister Eleanor had been the 23rd to vanish. She had left home at dawn to gather herbs along Fairview Creek and never returned. A.R.A. remembered the way the morning light caught in Eleanor's hair as she walked down the dirt path, humming softly. By evening, only Eleanor's basket was found near the creek, overturned, its contents scattered among damp stones. While others mourned and moved on, A.R.A. felt something unsettled inside her. Grief, yes, but also defiance. She refused to accept that the mountains had simply swallowed her sister whole. So, against the pleading of neighbors and the angry warnings of elders, A.R.A. packed a satchel with dried meat, a tin cup, a hunting knife, and her mother's old compass. Before sunrise, she stepped into the woods. At first, the forest seemed almost welcoming. Birds flitted between branches. Squirrels darted across fallen logs. The scent of pine and damp soil filled the air. A.R.A. followed the creek where Eleanor had last been seen, scanning the ground for any trace, a footprint, torn fabric, disturbed earth. She found nothing but deer tracks and the smooth ripple of water sliding over stone. Hours passed. The trees grew thicker. Sunlight thinned into scattered beams that barely touched the forest floor. The air cooled. A.R.A. told herself she would turn back by nightfall, but the deeper she walked, the more certain she became that something was pulling her forward. Not a sound exactly, more like an intuition, a pressure in her chest guiding her steps. Near dusk, she stumbled upon something that made her stop cold. In a small clearing stood a circle of stones. They were placed deliberately, each about the size of a human skull. 25 of them. A.R.A. counted twice. On each stone was a rough carving, a simple mark, different from the others. In the center of the circle lay objects, scraps of cloth, a rusted hairpin, a ribbon faded by time, a small silver thimble. A.R.A. knelt, her hands trembling. Among the items she recognized a strip of blue fabric embroidered with tiny white flowers. Eleanor had sewn that pattern onto the hem of her favorite dress. A branch snapped behind her. A.R.A.'s heart lurched. She rose slowly and turned. He stood at the edge of the clearing, half concealed by shadow. Tall, barefoot. His clothes were little more than stitched animal hides hanging loosely over a lean frame. His hair fell in wild tangles past his shoulders, streaked with dirt and leaves. His beard was thick and untrimmed, blending into the fur collar around his neck. But it was his eyes that froze her in place. They were not empty or crazed as she had imagined. They were sharp, aware, almost sorrowful. They stared at one another for several seconds that felt like hours. "Where is she?" A.R.A. demanded, her voice cracking but steady. He did not answer. His head tilted slightly, like a wolf assessing a stranger. Then he stepped forward into the fading light. His movements were strange, not clumsy, not entirely human either. He moved with the fluid quiet of something accustomed to the forest. Each step made barely a sound. A.R.A. forced herself not to run. "Did you take them?" she asked. "Did you take my sister?" Still, no words. He crouched and picked up one of the carved stones from a circle. Holding it in both hands, he extended it toward her. The carving on this one resembled a crescent shape intersected by a line. A.R.A. hesitated before accepting it. The stone felt warm, as though it had been resting in sunlight. When she looked up again, he had already retreated several paces. "Wait!" she shouted. He turned and walked into the trees. A.R.A.'s fear warred with her desperation. Every sensible thought screamed to her to run back to the village. But if this man, this creature, knew anything about the disappearances, she had to follow. She stepped into the forest after him. The terrain grew uneven and steep. Roots twisted like serpents across the ground. Thorn bushes snagged at her skirt. More than once she nearly lost sight of him, catching only brief glimpses of his silhouette slipping between trunks. Yet he never vanished completely. It was as if he wanted her to keep up. Darkness settled fully, but a pale moon rose overhead, casting silver light through gaps in the canopy. The forest seemed to shift under that glow. Shapes looked unfamiliar. Sounds echoed strangely. They traveled for what felt like hours until the man stopped near a rocky outcrop. He crouched and brushed aside branches concealing a narrow opening in the hillside. A cave. He stepped aside and gestured for her to enter. Eerie's heart hammered so loudly she feared it would burst. She considered fleeing, but then she heard something from within the darkness. A faint sound. Breathing. Human breathing. She swallowed her terror and ducked inside. The cave widened after a few steps, revealing a chamber illuminated by small oil lamps set into crevices. The air smelled of smoke and earth. And there, seated against the far wall, were women. Not ghosts. Not bones. Women. Some huddled under blankets of woven grass. Others stared blankly toward the cave entrance. Their clothes were worn and patched, their hair long and tangled. They looked thin but not starved. Frightened but not injured. ARA scanned their faces frantically. Then she saw her. "Eleanor," she whispered. Her sister lifted her head slowly, as if waking from a long sleep. Recognition flickered in her eyes. She rose unsteadily. "ARA." The single word shattered whatever strength ARA had left. She rushed forward, collapsing into her sister's arms. Eleanor felt real, solid and warm. Alive. Tears streamed down both their faces. "How?" ARA breathed. "What happened?" Eleanor glanced toward the cave entrance where the mountain man stood, watching silently. "He didn't hurt us," Eleanor said softly. "He brought us here." "Brought you?" ARA's voice sharpened. Eleanor nodded. "The night I disappeared, I slipped on the creek stones. I struck my head. I remember water, then cold. When I woke, I was here." "Why didn't you come back?" ARA demanded. "The forest." Eleanor's gaze drifted upward. "It's not safe at night anymore. Something else moves in it." ARA stiffened. "Something else?" Before Eleanor could answer, a distant sound echoed from outside the cave. A low, guttural growl that did not belong to any animal ARA had ever heard. The mountain man's posture changed instantly. He moved to the cave entrance and peered into the darkness. The growl came again, closer this time. Eleanor gripped ARA's hand. "That's why," she whispered. "He keeps us here to protect us." ARA's mind reeled. Protect them? From what? A shadow passed across the cave mouth. Massive. Distorted. The mountain man grabbed a spear leaning against the wall and stepped outside. ARA followed despite Eleanor's protest. Moonlight revealed a shape among the trees, taller than any bear, its body hunched, its limbs unnaturally long. Its eyes glowed faintly in the dark. It moved with jerking, unnatural motions, as though stitched together from nightmare. The mountain man let out a sharp cry, not of fear, but challenge. The creature lunged. What followed was chaos. The clash of bone and wood. Snarls that split the night. ARA watched in horror as the man fought with desperate ferocity, driving the spear into the creature's side. The beast shrieked, thrashing wildly. It swiped at him with claws that glinted in moonlight. ARA felt paralyzed, yet something inside her snapped. She grabbed a fallen branch and rushed forward, striking the creature's head with all her strength. The distraction was enough. The mountain man drove the spear deeper. With a final, ear-splitting scream, the creature staggered backward into the trees and vanished into the darkness. Silence crashed down over the forest. The mountain man stood breathing heavily, blood staining his arm where claws had torn into him. He looked at ARA, not with anger, but with something like approval. Eleanor emerged from the cave, along with several other women. "That wasn't the first," Eleanor said quietly. "There are more." ARA understood then. The disappearances had not been random. The forest had changed. Something ancient and malevolent had awakened in its depths. The mountain man had been taking injured or wandering women before the creatures could reach them. He had never been the monster. He had been the guardian. As dawn began to break, pale light filtering through branches, Ara made her decision. "We can't hide forever," she said. "The village needs to know." The mountain man watched her carefully. He seemed to weigh her words, though he never spoke. Eleanor squeezed Ara's hand. "If we leave, they won't understand." "Then we make them," Ara replied. Over the next days, the mountain man guided them safely back toward the edge of the forest. He moved silently ahead, scouting. When they reached the tree line overlooking the settlement, he stopped. Ara turned to him. "Come with us." He shook his head once. "You saved them." He simply stepped back into shadow. Ara held his gaze one final time before leading the women down the hill. The village erupted in disbelief and relief when the missing women returned. Stories spread quickly, of creatures in the forest, of a wild guardian who fought them off. Some believed. Others scoffed. But that autumn, no more women vanished. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, Ara would stand at the edge of the woods and feel eyes watching, not threatening, but protective. The Appalachian Mountains remained vast and mysterious, their secrets woven deep among roots and stone. But now the villagers understood something they had not before. Not every legend is born from fear. Some are born from sacrifice. And somewhere in the endless green shadows, a silent guardian still walks barefoot through the leaves, listening for the growl of darkness and the cry of the lost.